So there's been a lot of kind of back and forth on Twitter around Jimmy Dore. He has his YouTube channel, comedian, etc., and how he was calling out, AOC, the squad, any other members of the so-called, progressive elements of the Democratic Party if they don't hold their vote for Nancy Pelosi to become Speaker again, if Nancy Pelosi isn't willing to bring Medicare for All to the floor to get a vote. So we actually, see who, when it's time, to actually vote for it, who's actually going to show up and say they support Medicare for All, who supports, everybody having health care so we don't have tens of thousands of people in the U.S. dying each year because they don't have health care, even though we spend more than any other country in the world on health care. We have horrible health outcomes. Way too many people go bankrupt because of medical debt. Tens of thousands of people die because they don't have access to it. And so, Jimmy Dore was saying, hold Pelosi's feet to the fire. Make her have that Medicare for All vote. And if she isn't willing to, and if those so-called progressive members in Congress aren't willing to do that, then to hell with them. What's the point? What's the point? And then I really appreciated Moderate Rebel's really amazing podcast hosted by Max Blumenthal and Benjamin Norton of the Gray Zone. Highly recommend that site as well. At Young Turks, at Jacobin Mag host Anna Kasparian claims Jimmy Dore is a bad faith actor for criticizing Saint AOC, but apparently Anna had no problem doing propaganda for the Imperial NATO military alliance and Madeline Albright, who defended the deaths of 500 Iraqi children. And I believe I've made a video about this in the past, actually, but this little clip is very insightful here from a snippet taken from a Moderate Rebels podcast. I believe this episode, there's the Bernie Sanders and the Black Hole of the Brooklyn Left, I believe it's called. So let's just take a look at this clip and then we'll discuss.
Kasparian had gone to the Munich Security Conference earlier this year. The Munich Security Conference is put on by NATO. It's funded by the German government, the German Foreign Ministry, and some other Western European governments, as well as the arms industry, big banks, the oil industry, and McKinsey and Associates, which was just like relentlessly trashed by, pro-Bernie elements because of Pete Buttigieg's association with it. And she did what it looked like a paid gig.
It does look that way.
Various major foreign policy figures at the Munich Security Conference, including Madeline Albright. And she gave this softball interview to Madeline Albright where she came in just glowing with pride and talked about how excited she was to interview Madeline Albright, the author of Yugoslavia's destruction, the person who helped kind of launch the siege on Iraq. And instead of asking the first question...
And who defended the deaths of 500,000 Iraqi children.
Well, exactly. I mean, your first question should have been, do you still think it was worth it?
We have heard...
This was Albright being interviewed by 60 Minutes back in the day.
More children than died in Hiroshima. And is the price worth it?
At least Leslie Stahl asked her.
This is a very hard choice. We think the price is worth it.
And instead, it was just a softball interview for which Kasparian, it appeared to have been a paid gig for a NATO conference.
Welcome to your MSC. I am delighted to be here and to have a conversation.
And probably one of the reasons they had Kasparian interview Albright and these other figures is because they knew she would give them a softball interview. She's not going to call out Madeline Albright for defending the deaths of 500,000 Iraqi children. I mean, yeah, if that's not the first fucking thing you ask Madeline Albright, like, where do you have any type of journalistic integrity? Like, obviously not, in my opinion.
Former U.S. Secretary of State President under Bill Clinton, Madeline Albright. And Madeline Albright was actually the first.
She was the first female Secretary of State. And Madeline, first question, are you still okay with those 500,000 Iraqi children dying because of the U.S. sanctions that were placed on Iraq? How does that sit with you? Because to me, that's really fucked up.
Female Secretary of State in the U.S. And it is a pleasure to have you here. It's an honor to.
Okay, you could just tell from that setup, it was going to be a softball interview where Kasparian wasn't going to hold her feet to the fire about, I mean, think about that, like 500,000 Iraqi children died because the U.S. sanctioned on Iraq in the 90s. And Albright has defended that in the past. Why would you not call her out on that? I mean, that's journalistic malpractice. I mean, for fuck's sake. And then this is more of the moderate rebels. Maybe it's no surprise Anna Kasparian thinks Jimmy Dore and other left-wing critics of the Democratic Party leaders are acting in bad faith, considering she did pro-NATO neoliberal propaganda for Francis End of History Fukuyama.
Kasparian also gave a softball interview to Francis Fukuyama, who is one of the architects of the neoconservative movement, who wrote this discredited book on the end of history. Instead of asking him to kind of defend these ideas, she allowed him to hold forth on how evil populism
Not really
is.
surprising.
I thought these people around Bernie loved populism. They wanted left-wing populism. Well, he was just saying we need to defend the liberal order and liberal democracy and so on.
Welcome to your MSC. I'm Anna Kasparian, and we're about to have a conversation.
This looks like softball interviews all around. And again, that's the exact reason you put a journalist like Anna Kasparian in these situations where she finds, herself in these situations, because the powers that be, military industrial complex, security industrial complex, all these organizations, people associated with NATO and imperialism, they all know that. They all know she's not going to give, ask these pertinent questions to Madeline Albright or Francis Fukuyama.
Scientist and economist Francis Fukuyama will discuss identity politics and how he believes that it is incredibly important to push for liberal democracies around the world. Welcome, everyone. I'm Anna Kasparian, and we're about to have a conversation with Ian Bremmer. He's the founder of Eurasia Group, and we're going to discuss U.S.-China relations
Oh, Jesus.
along with the role of NATO.
Oh,
in
fuck.
attempting
We
to
don't
keep peace
need...
internationally.
NATO does not keep peace. All NATO does is escalate tensions between the U.S., these NATO so-called allies, and Russia. Again, she just all fucking propaganda and puff pieces right here. Your MSC.
Where's the quality control? Where are the red lines? This is
Yes.
the person that Jacobin has hired.
By the way,
Yeah,
it's
fuck
pretty
Jacobin's
clear,
trash too.
that TYT had some kind of deal worked out, because the young
Hashtag.
Kasparian, I'm looking at their YouTube right here. They were part of a campaign that was hashtag
Your MSC. Munich Security
So not
Council.
only were they participating in this NATO summit, the Munich Security Conference, which is I mean, the most blatant imperialist
Exactly.
go to, but they were actually trying to help rebrand it to make it woke. With hashtag
Your MSC.
Hashtag your Munich Security Conference. Hashtag your bombs that we're going to drop on Yemeni children. I mean, like, what the fuck?
Love that energy, Ben Norton. Thank you. Highly recommend, checking out the full episode. It's right there, Bernie Sanders and the black hole of the Brooklyn left. This is Kasparian's tweet. It kind of generated that response from moderate rebels. It's one thing to debate the strategies lawmakers like AOC should take. That's exactly what Jimmy Dore was doing, though. So where is your problem? My issue with Dore is that I don't believe he says anything in good faith. It's incredible to witness his rage-filled demands of some lawmakers while he refused to hold Tulsi accountable for a damn thing. Okay, but what he is pointing out is completely on point. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And again, she gets upset at Dore wanting so-called progressive politicians to actually fight for Medicare for all, but she's okay with palling around and giving softball interviews to people that are okay with 500,000 Iraqi children dying. Okay, it's fucked up. Peace. Thoughts down below. Much love.